Hello and welcome to another episode of the Molten Truth. I'm your host, Zoey Michaels. Today we have a guest that you and I are going to learn about at the same time because he's a little bit of a surprise. I know where he was sent to me by his publicist. I know that he is into flying airplanes and also writing, but I think he's science fiction. I think. And that's about all I know about our guest, Pat Daly. So you and I are going to learn about him all together. Pat, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Zoe. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So have you been writing books very long or are you kind of new to being an author? What's kind of the background here?
Well, I wrote a nonfiction quite a while ago, but it was a technical nonfiction. But I've always wanted to write. You know, uh, I jumped into fiction because that's what I love to read, and started writing in 2017, I think. Then, um, and then not long after that, we had a bunch of spare time. It seemed like,
Right.
and so I thought I had finished, and I started querying publishers or agents, querying agents to see if they wanted to rep my work. And along the way, I kept revising. So my first book, Spark, came out in 2021, and then since then I've had four more.
Well, look at you. Well done.
Wow,
You've been
thanks.
out there for quite a bit and you have some experience with this. All of your books, except that first one, are science fiction.
The last of the last five, four are science fiction, and one is Christian nonfiction.
Good. So tell us a little bit more about your books. They're science fiction, but that can mean so many things. There's so many avenues within the science fiction world. So
There are,
what
and
you
I mean,
got
I've
for us?
I've looked at I've looked at some of the stuff you have published,
Thank you.
and Echoed Minds. I think we're both classified kind of as cyberpunk, so that's kind of the genre that my stuff falls into, and a little bit of a quirky story how I came up with this idea. Um, I have two daughters, and when I first started writing the book, they were both playing a game called Pokemon Go.
Okay. Yes, I
And I
know
don't know
that.
if you've ever, yeah. So the the basic concept of the game is you get your cell phone and you wander around, and the camera will look at the environment, and then suddenly it'll superimpose a virtual creature on top of a real background. And then you try to catch it with your Pokeballs and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, my
Um,
brother-in-law was hooked on that game even before it was released. I guess he had access to the testing phase. He played it everywhere we went, including in the islands when we were on a cruise ship. I mean, he played it everywhere.
Yeah, for a pretty innocuous game, it gets fairly addictive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, so I got hooked on it for a while too. But that whole idea of superimposing virtual stuff over real kind of tweaked something in my mind, because I'd tried VR games, and VR games to me are dangerous because they sever the connection between virtual and reality. And so you put on the goggles, you put on your controllers, and suddenly you're in a different world. Now, your pets don't know that you're in a different world, and they think you're still dad. And so they come hanging around and they want to be near you. And so you can occasionally kick them accidentally or step on them, or you're swinging your hands doing some movement in your virtual uniform, your universe, and you take out your TV. It's like, there's some dangers. So I really liked the virtual constructs over real background idea, and so I took it and ran with it.
Very cool. Yeah, I have to say, even though I've always been aware of the whole virtual reality kind of game things, I've never tried it, never experienced it, so I did not realize that there wasn't. some kind of safety feature that would prevent that. I could just imagine. I would definitely kick the dog and my cats and who
Yeah.
knows what else in the process in my house. But
Yeah.
very interesting. But yeah, the overlay over real background, I can definitely see there'd be at least at the bare minimum safety benefit there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I thought I extrapolated that to, wouldn't it be cool if there were a Disneyland equivalent
Like
for
where
this
you're
kind of
going with this.
technology? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I made up these little goggles that you could see through so you could see reality, but then they also superimposed the virtual and blew it all up to a Disney-sized theme park and went from there.
Very cool. So this is within the story that you're doing this.
Yeah.
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 Okay. This is interesting. I could even imagine someone doing like a television or movie implementing these ideas from your book. I mean, that's a very cool idea. So,
Yeah. And I would, I mean, probably like you, my dream is that somebody picks up my book for a
put it on
screenplay.
screen, right?
Yeah. 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 I mean, in this day and age, once you put pen to paper or fingers on the keyboard, you're kind of hoping for that bigger audience, the big screen, or even the small screen, but a screen.
Right, exactly. It's because it's so visual in our minds. We see this, we can imagine the whole world and the people in it. And to be able to sit back and actually watch it take life would be such an amazing thing. I
Yeah.
don't even think about, the rest of it. The rest of it's just gravy. It's just the idea like, ooh, this would be such a great thing to experience on a small screen, a big screen, whatever. Just to see it would be amazing. But it's expensive to have something produced. I've talked to several writers who actually took it further and actually produced themselves, and that's no small project, and it's very expensive.
Yeah, I think that's beyond what I'll ever reach for. I mean, if Spielberg wants to call me up, I'm all in. But
Yeah.
doing it myself,
Yeah, I get you. And that's the thing too. As writers, even though we're engrossed in our creativity, and of course we have to do the marketing piece because it's inescapable. It's part of the package. But we then, by putting ourselves out there in our work, we become targets for people with not very honorable intentions. When I first started writing, my friends were like, "Have you seen this documentary about people who had been taken advantage of?" Oh, the big movie producers came and sent these messages and called them and hired some real life people who provided real services and used them as part of their trickery, unknown to them. But yeah, just so much caution to be had. So despite the dream, it's just about let's stick with our dream world in the book world because we don't trust you guys.
yeah, yeah, and that whole thing that you're talking about, the scammers, it's like, who wakes up one morning and says, you know what, I've tried this goodness stuff. I'm going to turn fully evil, and I'm going to start targeting the elderly, the uninformed, and the gullible.
Right?
And I'm just, I don't care if they don't have a lot of money. I'm going to take everything they've got.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
no conscience
No.
at all. Just yeah, it's amazingly disgusting what people the fact that they come up with this at all, and then they're even organized at it, and yeah, it's just a sad thing to see that happen. And they even go after people who are informed and who ask the right questions, but they mess with their mind enough that it's like they twist reality. I mean, it's a sci-fi novel just in real life. The whole
Yeah.
twisting of reality thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the most recent book, the one that's out right now, that's the one with the video overlay type idea, or was that one of your earlier books?
That's actually, there's four in the series, so all four of them have that technology going on.
Okay, so this is a series.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I missed that memo.
That's I didn't say it, so how would you know it?
Yeah. And what's the title of your series?
I call it the Spark Chronicles,
Okay.
And the books are Spark, Fire, little novella called Orkland, and then the latest book in the series is Embers.
Like it. I like the visualization and all that. Um, so, where does the title tie into the story in this virtual
Ooh,
overlay, or am I getting too deep into things?
no, no, no. I mean, this is since Embers is out, you know uh, where the story is going. But Spark came from, I needed to come up with a name for this theme park, right? And I had this vision of earlier in my life. I lived in the high desert in California,
Okay.
and there was a solar power development called Solar One. And then there's been more Solar 2, Solar 3. They've popped up everywhere. And I thought, well, what a cool way to provide power for this park would be to use solar power. And so I thought, okay, so the theme park has a solar farm that is actually the money making part of the operation, and they use that to fund all the quests and attractions. So I didn't want to use Solar One, Solar Two, any of that. So I said, oh, Solar Prime. That factors into
Yes.
my technical background. I go, okay, Solar Prime, augmented reality park. But if you just turn that into an acronym, it's SPARP. And that doesn't roll off your tongue very well. And I thought, okay, well, sometimes people that make up acronyms cheat a little bit. And so I said,
Yeah.
Spark. I pulled a K from park, and then everything's good. Uh, and then from there, when I decided to write the sequel, um, and I know you've got a duology out, so I want to talk a little bit about how your second book came about. But mine came about. I had no idea I was going to write a sequel. It was a self-contained, tied everything up, and then I wrote the last sentence, and I had this epiphany. It was like, whoa, there's way more to this story. And so, I started getting all these crazy ideas about where I wanted it to go. And so then, okay, now I've got Spark. What comes after Spark? Fire. Okay. And then, well, a spark and a fire, something ought to actually burn. And then what happens after it burns is you have the embers left over.
Sure.
So that's kind of the arc of the series thus far.
Okay. Well, and being from California, as you well know, Ember can easily be caught by those Santa Ana winds and leap back into fire and even into something far greater. So
Yeah.
I can imagine, should you find a hook, there might be a little bit more to this series than just
Yep.
what you're imagining in this moment.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I've actually turned away from it now. I'm starting a new, or I'm well through my next book, um, and it's same universe but completely different characters and aimed at a different demographic. So we'll see how that all goes.
Get you. That's the thing, I know we have to focus on one story at a time, but sometimes my mind wants to go in five different directions at once. And there's so many stories. I'm like, ooh, there's this storyline. And while I'm working on this, ooh, that's an idea. And sometimes I have to really make myself focus on the one story.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So how'd you end up? Did you set out to write a duology, or how'd that happen?
so this original idea to write the story in the first place was a frustrating day at work. As sometimes inspiration comes from those sources, right?
Yep. Yep.
The idea of, just the level of control, and it's necessary, but it's still like, feels limiting. And so I started kind of outlining kind of what I had in mind, the ideas. Um, and sometimes, just because I don't have a sounding board other than the dog and the two cats, sometimes I use chat gpt as a sounding board. What do you think about this? What about this? And is there anything out there in the market that covers this story, this thought process that I'm having? So this is how I use chat gpt as a sounding board. And then I also help ask it, can you make some suggestions? And so playing that, my thoughts against that, my original thought was, could I do this as just one book? And as I looked at it and I started writing it, I'm realizing, oh, this is going to be too long. It's just one book. There's no way I can do this. So then I kind of went back and went, okay, well, let's make this a 2-part book instead of, I didn't feel like there was enough to do 3 parts. Although now in retrospect, maybe I should have, because that's where Fractured Shadows came in. I felt like I needed to explain, how did we get to this world?
Yeah, that's
So
your prequel, right?
that's the prequel. I just put it out there on Amazon just in the last week or so.
Cool.
I wrote it a year ago, but I just finally, was like, let me put it out there. See if we can help our audience understand how we got to Rowan and his niece's world. Rowan, for me, is the main character. His niece, Lyra, is kind of like a side thought, but I wanted to appeal to Generation X as well as the generation that Lyra is from. And so that's kind of how that progressed.
Okay.
Just, how did we get to this world where suddenly people have the illusion of freedom? They're working at home and they're doing this particular thing that they're supposed to be really good at, that's supposed to be natural for them, but in fact, it's anything but natural. So,
Ooh.
yeah, that's
All
kind
right.
of how the Echoed Mind progressed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if I were going to, it's like I'm interviewing you now. Now, if I were going to jump into your series, would you have me start with your prequel, or would you have me save that for later?
I really feel like it could probably do either one and be okay. But I do believe the prequel, for people, some people just like to have like the roots of a thing before they get into a main story.
Yeah.
Other people don't mind starting halfway point, kind of like Star Wars, right? We started the movies at book, was it 4, 4, 5, and 6?
4. Yeah.
So there was nothing wrong with that. It was actually pretty great. And hopefully the Echoed Mind, while it will never be Star Wars caliber, is enough that it could stand on its own without the prequel. But the characters that Rowan and his niece met, I felt like needed more depth. And so the prequel was about one of the characters, Adric, how he came to be kind of the leader and that Rowan and Lyra are working with, as well as his partner that he's working with. So, yeah, I think it just depends on if you're someone who doesn't mind jumping in the middle of a story, or if you're someone who wants more detail. How did we get here?
One of the things, maybe I'm a little weird because I'm a writer. Hey, I like to watch how authors' writing evolves over the course of their writing. So I'd probably pick up Echoed Minds first to read that, then read the second half, and then go back just to see how you've grown as an author.
Yeah, and I will say I wrote them pretty close together. I just chose to release it a lot later. I'm actually still working. I'm not doing as much sci-fi in this moment, although I have these other ideas for sci-fi that I'm holding myself back on. One of the ideas, because I work in the medical world, so I hear a lot, in the medical scene of things. Um, I have this futuristic sci-fi idea, kind of like insurance company kind of becomes the dominant power, the political power of the world. So I kind of, in my head, I call it the pharmacracy.
Ooh, I like it. I
Yeah.
like it.
So I have this whole futuristic world that I'm building that's like meant to be a trilogy. And you've got this situation where they use the pharmaceutical world and the treatments as part of how they control people. So
Mm,
if you're like this high tier, well placed person, but someone in your family messes up, oh, you get pulled from this luxurious pharmaceutical thing, and now you're bumped down. And so, kind of, there's a lot involved, but that's one of the key things in
yeah.
that book that I have in mind. And of course, there's always the underground that looks for natural treatment and other things that are going to be pitted against them. So yeah, so it's one of a couple different sci-fi things I've got in my head.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when you're looking at some certain things and hearing people's frustration every day, it definitely it sticks with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So in the meantime, I'm starting a sister podcast, and I'm sorry, this is supposed to be about you. I'll finish this thought, then we're going to shift back to you because I mean we're here for you. But I just had decided in my last broadcast, and actually a day or two before that, I had made an announcement about starting a sister podcast, and this one is going to be about famous people and the diagnoses that we eventually learn about, but we don't know about it when they're dealing with it. I'm going to start off with the person who inspired this idea in the first place, and that is Paul Harvey. I don't know if you're familiar. Okay, you are, so I
Yeah.
can see it in your face. So I always
Good day.
loved his. Yeah, exactly. The rest of the story was a huge part of my life, especially on road
Yeah.
trips. I,
Yeah.
I, the music was good. There were some things, but the best part of a road trip was hearing Paul Harvey tell his stories. I loved it, and I've actually really missed hearing those type of things. And there's a few podcasts out there who are emulating that, I believe, maybe even more closely than what I have in mind. So I thought I want to take it from a medical point of view. I want to talk about people and the challenges, the diagnoses, the things that behind going on behind the scenes that we weren't aware about while they were dealing with it. And then at the end of the story, that's when you find out who I've been talking about, emulating
Ooh.
Paul Harvey's
Ooh.
style.
Yeah. Now you know the rest of the story. I like.
Exactly. So that's kind of where I'm going from. I just have to be careful that I don't infringe on that copyright on that. I want to honor him. I don't want to just be another Paul Harvey, so to speak. So I have written my first 2 episodes and hoping to get that broadcast in the next week or two here. But anyway, those are little irons I have in the fire, and I think that will tie in with my whole pharmacracy thing too, because it'll also double as research and potential
Okay.
fodder for that book.
Yeah.
So shifting gears back to you where it belongs. Now you in the information I received. So you're a pilot as well. Is that a profession or is that a hobby?
It was my profession. I was in the Air Force. I was a fighter pilot and a test pilot. And then after I left the Air Force, I worked briefly for American Airlines and got furloughed, and then ended up working at for Honeywell, but at Johnson Space Center, and got involved with the shuttle and the space station. And I think all the X-38. That was a big pivot and a big change in how I defined myself as a human being. But I think even when I left active flying, I've done flying adjacent stuff all my life, and now I'm consulting on some new aircraft. We're working on an all electric aircraft. We're working on a hydrogen powered aircraft. Some pretty cool stuff, pretty cool technology that's coming down the road. But actually flying for money, don't do that anymore.
Probably better off not doing that anyway.
Yeah.
Although I have to say, flying is such it can be so enjoyable under the right circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've got some buddies that are going to hate me for this, but one of the things I've determined over my life is that airline pilots are some of the best paid, unhappy people in the world. They almost overwhelmingly, they hate their employers. They hate the stuff that comes with getting to fly. And it's, that sometimes I feel like, well, getting furloughed from American Airlines was not the worst thing for me, regardless of how it might have felt.
Yes, I can imagine. It never feels good to be kind of taken out of where you thought you needed to be. I
Yeah,
mean,
true.
yeah. As for those who are dissatisfied with a job like that, I would say maybe try working the American Airlines call center for a little bit. You might be more appreciative of that peaceful airtime, comparatively peaceful airtime.
Yep,
Just
yep,
saying.
yeah. You know, and maybe it's the pilot personality, but we just love to gripe about stuff. And so even when you're locked in a cockpit, nobody can come up and bug you. You
Yeah.
know, and you're flying, you're on a 12-hour flight to Tokyo or something. You know, you spend 8 hours of it griping at each other about stuff. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah, because your attention has to be on the controls and what's on ahead of you on in the air, right? I mean, it isn't like you can just sit back and read a book or entertain yourself. Some your attention needs to be focused because you've got lives in your hands.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, you can't plug in and call up whatever movie they're showing in the back or video on demand or anything like that. You're supposed to be when you're in that seat, that's your job. And you're supposed to, like you said, you've got lives in your hand. You're supposed to be paying attention, ready to, a lot of the time, even though you're paying attention, you're sitting there like this
Right.
because you've turned on the autopilot and now it's a lot like you're really busy at the beginning, you're really busy at the end, and that stretch in the middle is kind of like staring at your oven, trying to make sure the cake doesn't burn.
And with that perspective, you can understand why there'd be dissatisfaction. Sitting there for 8 to 10, 12 hours with really not anything to truly occupy you, to keep your mind and things busy. I mean, I get that way. I work on the phones with what I do, and the days I'm very busy, I don't love, but I don't necessarily hate. It's just, it's busy. But I enjoy my downtime because I can maybe take a few minutes to think for myself and write notes or imagine like what I'm going to do with a book. And I don't think a pilot would have that freedom to do that. Like you wouldn't necessarily sit there and be like making notes because that would be just distracting from the job.
Yeah, we certainly shouldn't be.
Right. Exactly. And and there's also that oversight. I know there's the little black box, so they have the recordings at the bare minimum. Do they also video the pilots these days, or do they?
No, and here's where I'm going to get in trouble again. I think they should,
Yeah,
um, because uh, with great power comes great responsibility. You're getting paid a good amount of money to take people safely from point A to point B. You should not fall asleep in your seat. You should not be reading a book. You should not be, writing notes for your next book. You should be paying attention to the airplane and what's going on around you. So right now it's audio only, and the unions are hugely opposed to video. And I think that it's going to come eventually. Um, because we're already at the point where we don't really need two people in the cockpit. You know, let's put one person and a camera. You can have somebody sitting at home ready to zoom in to talk about what the problem is. But
right. Or I would say keep the two people with the camera, but change it out where maybe one of them can take time away. Maybe they could alternate shifts. 2 hours you get a break, 2 hours I get a break, whatever the length of time that makes sense for a flight. But that way, perhaps they can come back to that spot refreshed and focused rather than one person just being tunnel vision. Because sometimes two heads are better than one, and
yeah,
technology does
yeah,
fail.
true, true. And I mean, they do that on really long flights, like the 12-hour to Tokyo. You'll have another pilot on board, and you will rotate them out. And sometimes there's a bunk And so the pilot that's not sitting in one of the seats gets to go take a nap, or sometimes they put them back in first class, and they can you can get in your little first class seat, pull your curtain, take a nap,
And that
watch a
seems
movie.
reasonable to me. Just like in the days of the cruise ships or the days of, like, um, this is not a fair comparison, but Titanic comes to mind.
Yeah,
But the idea that you've got your main captain, you've got your other captain, and the one in charge needs to have relief, takes a break, and someone else is in charge, and whatever goes down. Yes, the other guy is kind of responsible ultimately, but anyway, bad comparison. Just the first thing that popped in my head, though.
no, I think that's an apt comparison, because got to have somebody. There's somebody that's always ultimately responsible, but it's sure nice to have a little relief now and then, so you can have some lunch, take a nap.
Exactly. Think your own thoughts for a little bit. Read that book, whatever the case.
Yeah,
Just be refreshed so that you can be strong on the job. It's the same reason the rest of us on the ground get our 15-minute breaks or our lunch hour, so we can have a few minutes of sanity in our day, because anytime you're in the hands of anyone else, all kinds of crazy can happen.
yeah, true.
Which is why I do this on the side, so I have moments of joy in my life.
There you go.
So, you're finishing up the series, or you've already finished the series?
Well, I'm calling it done for now,
Okay.
but we had a big book launch party for it, and I got asked a bunch of questions about what's going to happen in the next Spark book. And I go, well, there's not really going to be a next Spark book. What? But
Never
we
say
love this
never.
part. We love that part. We need more. Well, okay, I won't shut the door completely, but I've got sometimes the ideas are like rabid badgers in your brain, and they're just fighting each other, fighting to get out, see who's going to get fed next. And so sometimes you just gotta let them out and let the ideas out, and give them a shot. So maybe I'll go back. When Spielberg calls, I'll probably be happy to write a few spin-offs, but right now I'm pivoting to other science fiction.
Well, and rightly so. We've got so many things that we want to write about. You know, unless there's some kind of other reason for it to continue, yeah, it's nice to change gears and refresh. This is where, I'm sure there ends up being fan fiction. People are like, oh, the story has to continue and let's write, this. And sometimes I want to say, you know what? I understand the copyright laws. I understand, this is your territory. But if you're not going to write anymore, maybe we could come up with a deal where I can write and, put it under your umbrella or something. Because I look at some stories that I've loved. I'm like, this story needs to continue in this direction. Could I please write this story? I would love to have that opportunity with one particular book series. I'm like, oh, I would so love to continue this. And I know
Yeah.
I can't because of copyright laws.
Yep. Or are you a Battlestar Galactica fan?
I watched it as a kid, but mainly because there was nothing else on TV on Saturday. I didn't love Battlestar Galactica. Love Star Trek. Don't mind Star Wars, but I really did not love Battlestar Galactica.
Well, fair enough. It's just they did a reboot of it, which I loved, because yeah, the Battlestar Galactica I remember from being a kid with the robotic dog, and yeah, good for its time,
True,
but
and
not
that's why we
not
watched it. It was
yeah.
what was available, yeah. And sometimes the books are so much better. You know, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. They haven't really done a really successful transition to TV or movie, in my opinion. They've tried. They just didn't cut the mustard as far as I was concerned. But the books are wonderful, especially the radio transcripts, because it tells the story behind the story. Love
Oh,
that. So sometimes it's just a matter of time. Maybe one day there will be a really excellent version of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy on the screen to match the caliber of the books. Maybe the same with Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
Right? Sorry,
Yeah.
I got the name wrong for a second.
Yep. Yep. And I only bring that up because there was then, there was a lot of fan angst when the series ended, but God bless them, they ended the series. I hate nothing more than when the writing goes steadily downhill because they're running out of ideas, they're running out of energy, and then eventually it gets canceled, and you're like, well, what about all my favorite characters? What happened to them?
Right.
So Battlestar Galactica, they finished the series, but a lot of fans are not happy because just like you and me, we wanted more. And so there was an episode of a show called Portlandia, uh, kind of a quirky show, but the characters in that um, find the guy, Ronald D. Moore, who wrote a lot of the Battlestar scripts. They find somebody named Ronald D. Moore, not the Ronald D. Moore, but they kidnap him. They kidnap Edward James Olmos, and they make them create a final episode, and it was just pretty entertaining.
I think I'm gonna have to watch Portlandia. I've not watched it yet. I've seen it when I've scrolled for options of things to watch, but now you have my attention.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm gonna have to
that's
check that
definitely
one
a
out.
yeah, quirky but entertaining.
You gotta love it. It's like what's that other show my brother was after me to watch for a long time? It was kind of like when Star Trek finished its 10th season, The Next Generation, and then they stopped producing it, and then you had other shows trying to fill that void. Oh, that's gonna bug me now. There was a show that was pretty good at scratching the itch. Um, but I didn't watch it until just a year or two ago. Oh, that's gonna bug me. What was
Babylon
that?
5.
No, no, because DS9 was on the TV too at that time, and for me that was better than Babylon 5. But no, it was kind of like a comical version of Star Trek without being Star Trek, and it's,
Orville.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
that's it. Orville, yes. So it's actually pretty good, and I think there's more episodes coming up, and I didn't expect them to bring it back, but apparently they're bringing it back again.
Yeah.
I saw
Yeah,
advertising for that.
they had some problems I thought early on where they couldn't decide how seriously they wanted to take themselves.
Yeah,
And so they kind of went away from being funny a lot to try to be serious, and it was like, hmm. So there's some cringy episodes, but overall, yeah,
yeah.
it
I
did
thought they
scratch
did
the itch.
pretty well. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Considering what was available at the time, because I like they had brought in Star Trek Enterprise, and at that point in time, I was not buying it. I did not like Star Trek Enterprise when it first debuted. So I said, you know what? The closest thing to Star Trek at that point in time was Roswell, 2003 version of Roswell. So
Yeah.
I watched that instead of watching Star Trek Enterprise. Thank goodness eventually Netflix came along with the DVDs initially and later the videos, and I was able to skip over the part that was putting off putting for me, and I was able to actually watch the series and enjoy it. But
Yeah, good.
they killed it for me with that theme song. I was like, I'm not watching this. That
Yeah.
mine closed, but once I was able to skip over the theme song, oh, this is actually pretty good. Okay, we're gonna watch this.
Yep. And isn't it funny how that works? We've got a concept in our mind of what this universe should be, and now they've got this kooky theme song, and you're going,
This is not Star Trek. This is something
yeah,
masquerading as Star Trek. Star Trek doesn't
yeah,
have music in this song, and these lyrics are ridiculous.
yeah,
At least in my head, they were. I've got the faith to believe. I'm sorry, faith is belief. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation in my little world over here. But I tell you, I was like, nope. not gonna watch this
Yeah, yeah.
purely for that reason.
And I understand. Um, okay, since we're on Star Trek,
Yeah, yeah.
did you see Section 31?
Not yet, but I like the idea of it, especially with who they cast. So, am I going to be disappointed, or is it actually as good as I hope? I'm going to be disappointed.
You're going to be disappointed.
I'm
I
sorry
mean,
to hear that.
I thought it was going to be a good cast because I love Michelle Yeoh, and
Exactly.
yeah, um, but there's so much going on in this super secret section
This
of
should be a
Starfleet.
serious thing, not
Yeah,
goofy.
yeah, yeah.
That's such
Although
a.
I go ahead.
Go ahead. No, no, go ahead.
I was going to say I did appreciate the fact that when they're showing the Enterprise zipping around or whatever the spaceship is, you still get the swoosh sound, even though that's completely nonsense. But
Well, yes, but it's Star
we
Trek.
need it. Yeah, we need it. It's an audio visual experience.
It's so true. Yeah, I mean, we know space is silent, but yeah, there's just something about that swoosh that's fills your soul.
Yeah,
Yeah, with the Michelle Yeoh, and I was thinking back to like the episodes on Deep Space Nine. Well, when Bill Sadler represented Section 31, how serious his demeanor was when he was dealing with the Doctor, and I was just like, yeah, this is the degree of seriousness that goes with Section 31. It's spycraft. It's Star Trek spycraft. This is supposed to be serious. This
yeah,
should not be all fun and games. So yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
I'm sorry to hear that, but maybe they'll straighten out. You know how Next Generation started off a little like, well, this could be good, but it took a while for Patrick Stewart to find his footing to really get into the groove. Maybe it'll be like that. One can
Yeah,
hope.
we'll hope. We'll hope.
So the future books for you. What projects, what storylines are you exploring?
Uh, I am the next one again, sci-fi. Uh, the the basic premise is kind of two asynchronous timelines and travel through both space and time between um, you know a China in the future a few years
Okay.
and a U.S. in the present. And there's going to be they're going to find out that it's not a one-to-one match because they'll discover that things that happened in future China never happened in our China. So it's not just displaced in time and distance, it's also displaced in history.
Okay. I like the sound of this. This is interesting. You're my second author to use China as a subject in the ones I've interviewed, with two very different takes on how the stories would be. So both of them very fascinating. Yours sounds like I can't wait to hear when you finish this book and release it, and hopefully you'll come back and you'll tell us about it.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, we would love that. But yeah, it's just there's so much that goes on in the world around us. There's so many sparks of inspiration out there. And just to be able to take one and just run with it is such a gift. And I'm so glad you're sharing your gift with the world.
Oh, my pleasure, and thank you. Thank you for sharing your gift as well.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, so really quick before I forget to ask this, do you have a website?
I do. It's thepatdaily.com.
Okay, thepatdaily.com. And
Right. And
daily,
daily
you're
is
going on a
spelled
daily
DAI.
drive.
Yep. Yep.
D A
And
I
that'll
L
get you,
Y.
yep, DAIOI. That'll get you to my blog. And then on Insta, I'm Pat Daily Pics, PICS. And Facebook, I'm Pat Daily Author. I'm I'm also on X, but
Okay.
I'm not on X much.
I get you. And
You know,
I think I've got an account, but I barely use it. It's
yeah,
time for all the social media. We're too busy writing,
yeah, yeah. I never thought that managing social media would be the hardest part of being an author.
right? But then you have to
Yeah,
think like, what am I going to share? What am I going to say? How many posts do I need to do to get people interest? How many of these people looking at my information are actually legitimate potential readers, and how many of them are looking just to take advantage? It's just like,
yeah.
whatever. We'll deal with that when we deal with it.
Well, I got a letter from a fan, and he said that loved the books, told me what he liked about it, and he said when it's made into a TV show or a movie, I want to do the soundtrack. And so I said, well, that's really cool. Now I want to know what the songs you'd put in there. So he ended up sending me a list of 10 songs, and one of the artists um, was an Australian rapper. And
Okay.
so I do a little background research, and of course, this Australian rapper has an Instagram site. He has posted 14 times and has 4 million followers. So I'm thinking they're not going there for his posts.
No,
They're
yeah, I would say not. Yeah, I have to say. Yeah, there's only a handful of famous people I follow, and it's more like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting, or that's an interesting picture. That's about where my attention ends. Because unless you're doing a concert in my town or have a book coming out that I might be interested in, that's about where my attention span. That's all the bandwidth I've got for you.
yeah. I'd rather see posts about dogs doing funny things.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. Give me some entertainment, something to distract me from this phone call where someone's not happy.
Yeah, yeah. And something that makes it a little easier for me to go to bed at night, not
Yes.
spin up my anxiety and
Hmm.
anger over something.
Exactly right. These days, I've been looking at posts about Norwegian elk hounds. I had one as a pet that I lost, and so I just find great pleasure in seeing about these others that are thriving and looking for homes, and it just makes my day a little brighter to go, oh, look at that baby.
Yeah, yeah. But that's the gateway drug. You start looking them online. Next thing you know, you're wandering past the shelter, or and then pretty soon you have 8 dogs.
Yeah, I can't do that. One dog and
Yeah,
two cats is probably more than I should have already. But I still, it fills the void that she left behind. So that's my little happy spot in my day. Oh, as we get ready to close out our show, and it's been so much fun, I've let it go longer than I usually do, just because I'm having a great time talking to you. But I do have a random question from a previous guest. Um, so they asked, "What do you need in your life to make it more fun or less stressful, just more enjoyable?"
what do I need in my life to make it more enjoyable? I need pets that behave.
I quite agree.
So here's the story. Right now we're at one dog, one cat. Um, we've we've gone through a lot of our lives with 3 cats and 2 dogs, but we've kind of attrited down to one and one.
Yeah.
And the cat we have is getting very old. She's at least 18. That's as
Wow.
far back as our records of her go. Uh,
Significant.
and she's a skinny little long-haired black cat, And for the last year or so, I don't know if it's feline dementia or what, but she just, just randomly yowl in the middle of the night. She doesn't yowl during the day. It's only at night when you're trying to sleep. And it's not a pleasant like meow. It's like a meow. You're like, oh my God.
Wakes you up out of
An
deep thought.
infant
Yeah.
is being tortured or something.
Yeah. Oh.
And then the dog, he just decides that it's time for me to get up. So he comes in, he starts nudging the bed, and then, you try to burrow under the covers, and he worms his nose in there and puts that cold little nose right on your arm. It's like, all right, I give up. Yeah. So, and okay, so your listeners will not flood you with comments. I know that pet behavior is the responsibility of the pet owner. I know this is my fault for not training or giving them a better environment. So I get that. So don't send Zoe your hate mail for me because it's not her fault. I know it's my fault.
Well, and that all we can do is take it and either choose to live with it or make changes to improve it. I Sometimes you need it from an outside source. I was complaining to some friends about how my cats kept waking me up earlier and earlier, and it's because I would give them their wet food when I woke up every morning. And they said to me, "Well, why don't you give it to them at night instead?" And you know what? That was brilliant. And it's like, yep,
Yeah.
they let me sleep now. Never would have occurred to me to do that. But sometimes it just takes an outside voice, but from your friends, from people who know you.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so have you had time to kind of consider a possible question for our next guest?
I have. I have. And here's a little background for it.
Sure.
The Walking Dead.
Okay.
When it was new, a bunch of us watched it at work, and then we would get together the next morning, coffee break, and we'd talk about it, and we'd talk about how stupid they were. And we called our little group the Mocking Dead. So here's my question. What would be your strategy for surviving a zombie apocalypse?
Strategy for surviving a zombie apocalypse. Well, that's definitely a interesting question to ask. I look forward to seeing the expression on their face and as they take that in. So I have got that written down. Before we close out the show, is there anything else you would like to share with our audience?
Uh, the best way to let an author know that you appreciate their work is, first of all, to buy it and then leave a review. We are in the world of algorithms, and the best thing you can do for anyone whose work you appreciate is to leave them a review.
You
And
are 100% right about that.
yeah,
You were saying.
so buy our books, read our books, leave reviews.
Absolutely. We depend on what's called social proof, social credit. Your reviews with the appropriate stars are that social proof that causes places like Amazon to even put our books in the pathway of potential readers who are looking for something like our book. Help us be found. So thank you. That is an awesome tip. That is the average person doesn't realize it, how important that little thing is, just leaving that review. So thank you. All right. Well, we're going to close this out. Thank you for joining us. If you liked our episode, if you liked our series, please like, subscribe, tell your friends, share it out, and stay tuned for the other the other podcast, Before the Diagnosis, Famous Lives Untold. So stay tuned. Watch for that to come out. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.